I'm your #1 fan. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen, and this week we are taking a look back at a Stephen King adaptation, and that is Misery. Directed by Rob Reiner, starring James Caan and Kathy Bates in an Oscar-winning role of Annie Wilkes. So we start off the film, we meet the novelist Paul Sheldon, as played by James Caan, who also does an excellent job in the film. And so he writes these series of like romance type novels called, based on the character Misery. So he's trying to get away from that. He wants to come into his own and do something different. He's tired of doing all these like romance novels, and this series has felt like it's tied him down. He wants to unloosen the restraints of writing this series of romance novels. He wants to do something different. Okay. So he's just written a novel, and he's really proud of his work, and he wants to celebrate. He grabs a bottle of bubbly, he celebrates, and he prepares to go to meet his agent, played by Lauren Becall. She plays the agent, his agent, Marcia Sindel, and so that's really cool, having a legend like Lauren Bacall in the film. How cool is that? She's been in movies with Humphrey Bogart back in the day and stuff. So as he's on his way to meet his agent, and he's so excited about the new book, he didn't realize he's going out in his car in the blizzard, a brutal blizzard, a snowstorm. And his car starts to go out of control a little bit, and he can't control it, and his car crashes and flips over like 5 times into a ditch, and he's completely incapacitated. And someone actually gets to him and pulls him out of the car wreck and gives him mouth to mouth, and this complete stranger. And so he wakes up in someone's house, and it's this lady, and her name is Annie Wilkes, and as soon as he wakes up, she's like, I'm your #1 fan. So right away you get to realize that she's like this obsessed fan. She absolutely loves his work, especially the Misery novels that he's written, that series of romance novels. So she's completely obsessed with the character Misery and all her ongoing stories. So as Paul comes to consciousness, everything seems alright. He's very happy that this woman saved him from the fiery car wreck. He could have died. She saved his life. So she's very grateful towards her. And she seems nice enough, maybe a little overly into his work as a novelist, but she seems kind of nice. I guess she's a nurse for the local hospital, and she seems to be a very good one. Look at the work. He was pretty much almost completely paralyzed from the waist down. But she somehow managed to save his legs, and she's got him all restrained, and but you can see his legs are all completely bruised and battered, and he's just a mess. He just looks like shit, like he just went through war, So that crash really did a number on him. So he's confined to the bed for quite a while. It's going to be a long recovery process, which Annie intends to help him along with. But as the movie goes on, Paul starts asking questions like, when do you think I'll be able to call my attorney or my agent or my daughter, his family, and he just says, the phone lines are down due to the storm. It's such a harsh storm, but as soon as the phone line comes up, I'll give them a call, or I'll call the agent. So she keeps kind of like stringing him along, telling him everything's gonna be okay. You know, we'll get you up and at him. We'll get you ready to make your comeback, and I'll help you through the process. But as the movie goes along, he really starts seeing that she is a really kind of a demented fan, you know, that she's so into these novels that it's like clouds her mind, you know, and that she's almost kind of like a stalker, that she even tells Paul that he's been following her. I guess every time Paul Sheldon does a novel, he retreats to this town called Silver Creek, Colorado. And I guess Annie is well aware of it, and she follows him around wherever he goes, like stalking him. And so that's how she knew that he crashed into the ditch, because she was following him. So he starts to get a little nervous, like, what am I getting myself into here? This is not a very comfortable situation. And then once she finds out about the fact that he's not going to be writing these Misery novels anymore, that he's going to actually kill off the character of Misery that she's been following all these years and that she's so obsessed with. So she gets a copy of his newest novel where Misery is killed off due to, you know, she dies during childbirth. And she just loses it, you know. Misery cannot die! She's like, you dirty birdie! She has a way with words. She's like this country bumpkin, Annie Wilkes, you know, because she lives on a farm. And she's got this pig called Misery, dedicated to the novels, of course. But yeah, as soon as she finds that out, she really loses, and she like slams the book on his legs. He's like, "Wah!" You know, because his legs are so messed up. So as she leaves, anytime she goes out, so she does go out to the grocery store, and as soon as she does that, he kind of starts trying to get out of bed, and as soon as he does, he's like in incredible pain. But he tries to find out what's going on with this lady, and he finds out that she has a pretty shady past, you know, that she was involved in a series of murders associated with the hospital, like, I don't know, like malpractice suits, where people ended up dead. But somehow she got away with it, you know. And yeah, so he finds out some shady stuff about her background, and he starts to realize just who he's dealing with. And once Annie finds out about that, she's like, don't even think about anyone trying to come for you. I didn't call anybody. I didn't tell anybody. Nobody knows that you're here. And remember, if I die, you die. And you're like, whoa. And then as soon as Paul Sheldon starts getting his legs together, he starts healing a little bit. He starts being able to move a little more, and he gets out of his bed a little more. And then she finds out once she gets back from the store the next time, she starts saying, I know you've been out, because that statue is always pointing due south, and this time it's heading due west. So I know you've been out. And then she puts this block of like wood in between his legs, like a hunk of wood that you would use for like the fireplace. He puts it in between his legs to hold them there, and she grabs this sledgehammer and in one of the most famous scenes in like horror history and any Stephen King adaptation, I would say, she bam each leg, and you see his foot like twist over and break, and then she goes for the other one, bam, you see the other foot go. Oh, it's so nasty. It's so brutal. Like, you don't really see it because the camera kind of cuts away. Oh, but you can feel it in your bones, and and you can hear the bones snap, and and you can see the pain in James Caan's face. He's like, ah, you know. Oh, it's so nasty. It's so violent. Oh, it's really sick. It's awesome though. So, but again, eventually Paul Sheldon works up the will, the power to recover. And in the meantime, we meet this guy Buster, who is the local sheriff of Silver Creek, and he gets a call from Marcia Sindel, Lauren Bacall's character, wondering what's happened to him. You know, is he missing? You know, he hasn't been around. He always calls when a new novel's coming out. So he starts investigating the disappearance of Paul Sheldon. And, you know, as the movie goes along, he gets closer and closer to finding out about what's going on. You know, he starts reading the Misery novels himself, trying to really get a handle of what's going on. And he also knows about Annie Wilkes being a huge fan of Paul Sheldon. Actually, the whole town is. A lot of them have his books and they're big fans, but he knows that she's especially a really hardcore fan, because he goes to the local grocery store where they sell the novels, and he's like, every time a new novel, Misery, comes out, she makes me set aside the first copy. That's when he realizes, you know. And there's one hilarious scene, I gotta say, when Annie she's going through traffic and this guy cuts her off. She starts yelling at him, "You dirty birdie! You cock-a-doodie!" It's so funny, like, she won't come out and curse. She just says, like, silly stuff like that. "You cock-a-doodie!" And she also chastises Paul Sheldon for having too much language in his book. She's like, "Oh, you got too much filth in there. The language, Paul, it's unbelievable." It's like she can't curse, I guess, the way she was raised. She, like, can't curse. But then towards the end she does, and you're like, what? That's totally out of character. I don't know if they just threw that in there for a laugh, where she says, "You lying cocksucker," when she strangles Paul. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not Annie. But yeah, as the sheriff Buster closes in, he finds Annie, pays a visit to Annie, and meanwhile Paul and Annie get into a big scuffle, and she throws him down the stairs and locks him in the basement. And then as soon as Sheriff Buster comes to visit, he starts asking her all kinds of questions, and she starts to get a little worried, you know. But she plays the part well. She invites him in, offers him coffee, and tells him how much of a big fan she is of Paul Sheldon and his novels. And, you know. But, so the sheriff starts looking around the house. "She'd mind if I look around?" And he finds the basement, and he goes to open the door, and then he sees Paul Sheldon at the end of the stairs, and he's like, "Mr. Sheldon?" And then as soon as he does that, Annie gets the shotgun, boom, right through his chest. Kills him. So she kills the sheriff. And as soon as that happens, all hell breaks loose, and they have like World War III. Paul Sheldon, he comes up with a plan that he's going to write a novel for Annie, because she wants to write Misery's return. She wants Misery to return and come back to life miraculously. So he plays the part. He types it up, and he types the book up, comes up and finishes the whole novel, and he keeps stringing her along. You know, Misery is almost done. We're gonna give Misery back to the world. And she gets all excited. "Oh, I can't wait," you know. And as soon as he shows her the book, she's like, "I got it all right here, Misery's Return. Are you ready to find out what happens?" And then he lights the book on fire, and she really looks like, "Ah!" You know, she launches at him, she tries to strangle him, and he smashes the typewriter right over here. Boom! You know. And they really go at it, but it's so exciting, it's so thrilling, it's such an excellently directed thriller by Rob Reiner, and of course based on the novel by Stephen King, and this is absolutely one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time, and that is Misery. starring James Caan, Kathy Bates, Lauren Becall, Richard Farnsworth. It's an amazing thriller. It's so excellently acted by all parties. James Caan is awesome. Kathy Bates is just absolutely brilliant. Extremely deserving of the Oscar. This is one of the best performances in any Stephen King movie, I would say. So Running by Misery, it's an excellent movie. I give it 2 devil horns up. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.